Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is the Piracy Show. Now, on today's show, of course, we're going to be dealing with the Buccaneer, and then we're going to be dealing a little bit with my personal fleet and some changes that I've made relative to the Buccaneer. Let's get started with the Buccaneer. Now, of course, here we are. Here's the Buccaneer. The ship came out on Friday. We finally got to see all the stats, the weapon stats. No more theory crafting. We can actually look at it. And the ship looks fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Now, insofar as the appearance, as I was saying last week, it doesn't really look like a Drake ship to me, because I look at Drake and I see the classic cockpit of the earlier Herald concept. I see the cockpit of the Cutlass. But when you look at the broader spectrum of Drake ships, maybe the Drake look is more about, and I want to say this not in a negative way, but a more of a haphazard, whatever suits the situation type construction. Maybe that's the Drake look, and that my interpretation of it was not correct. So perhaps this does in fact look like a Drake ship. I'm open to that interpretation, and I can accept it if that's the way it is. Now, the thing about the ship that I like, though, is the stats and the write-up of the ship. Now, in the write-up, when they're talking about the range of a Herald, in the interview, when they're talking about it having some kind of specific, or possibly having a specific interdiction type weapon, that gets me very interested in this ship very, very quickly. And that's what I was talking about last week. Unless it shows me something really striking, something that really grabs my attention, it's just going to be another ship to me. But when I see these things, and when I see this write-up, and I watch the interview, absolutely it is something that I am very much in tune with, and something that speaks to me in terms of what I intend to use it for in the Star Citizen universe. So, all aboard. I'm on the hype train for this ship. I'm thoroughly all aboard on the hype train for this ship, shall we say. Now, of course, one of these is going to end up becoming a Caterpillar later on down the road. But by getting these ships, I was able to liquidate my Super Hornets and then free up money for other things down the road. But also, since, those of you who have watched a lot of my videos and watched this channel before will know that the Super Hornets were in effect never destined for me, but they were destined for the two wingmen who are going to act as my distraction while I was flying my Saber. Now, doing this allows me to get my wingmen into a cheaper, easier to maintain ship, once again with LTI, and I don't have to worry about it so much, since I'm going to be flying the Saber anyways, which the Saber is, of course, a permanent addition, because I've always been a huge lover of all things stealth. And so to have that ship, and then to have these two ships to serve as either coverage for my Caterpillar or as wingmen to distract people while I move in for the kill with my Saber, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, does that mean that I'll never be flying it myself? Well, no, I'll be flying it myself as well, but it's just something to consider, is that the cheaper maintenance on the ship and then handing it off to alts did make sense to me. Now, specific to the ship itself and its weapons, I like the idea that you can go all the way up to a size 4 gun. I like the idea that you can put size 3s in the close wing routes, and or just outside of the engines, and the size 1s on the end of the wing. At first, I felt very negatively about those. I felt that those should have been maybe right in the wing routes, right next to the main fuselage. Still fixed, but right there. I think it would have made for a tighter firing pattern and probably better. But I mean, realistically, I guess you could put a couple of size 1 Joker Sucker Punches out on either wing, and that would be good for attacking much larger ships. So, I mean, I guess as kind of a form of balancing against, having the same amount of guns and relatively the same size of guns that a Hornet has, having these two guns as fixed would probably kind of serve as a way to kind of say the Hornet's over here, this ship is over there. But I don't like the placement of the guns on the ship, and that is the one thing that, you know I keep coming back to this, but it is the one thing. I mean, especially when you see the interviews when they're talking about making the ship, and they say, you know, pretty much, okay, we got all this done, we got all that done, we got the design language, and now I had to figure out where the guns were going to go. Well, see, the gun should be one of the first things to figure out. And when you're looking at the weapon placement on the ship, like right here, that firing arc, when you have gimbaled weapons, it's not so big a deal for the two, you know, the two inner size 2s presumably gimbaled, and the two size 2s underneath that are gimbaled. And those wingtip guns just fired off into space. Now, if we were to look at, say, weapon convergence, and we were to adapt weapon convergence to that design, well, then you kind of create a kind of optimal area where if you can set weapon convergence, you can have kind of a range where you're kind of in optimal range and you can bring all your weapons to bear. And that can be a very good thing. However, if you centralize your weapon placement, as you can see here, well, then you create an optimal range that is the entire width and breadth of, you know, the range of your weapons. And that not only serves as a benefit to people who fly with fixed weapons, or people who fly with, say, a HOTAS and might not have access to fine control over their gimbaled weapons, but also to mouse players who choose to fly with fixed weapons. It can also be a boon to them as well, and it's something that that rewards skill in handling your ship rather than, you know, skill at clicking on things on screen. And I think that you know, rearranging things a little bit and kind of moving the missile pods out to the outer engines, or just outside of the engines, and moving the guns into the wing roots and next to the cockpit, I think would be a superior configuration for the ship. And it would be something that would make this, you know, make the ship better, and would kind of push towards more skilled handling of the ship. And I think it would just make a better ship overall, not only for joystick and HOTAS users, but also for mouse users as well. So that is the one thing that detracts from the ship for me, is, you know, once again, you know, weapon placement being treated as an afterthought when really it is core to any combat ship. And so that concerns me. That, I mean, to even see that in a video and to see someone say, and then I kind of had to figure out where the weapons went. No, like, the weapons should be one of the first things that you figure out where it's going to go. It's core to designing a fighter, is knowing where your weapons are going to go before you build out the rest. I mean, if you look at, say, an F-22 with its internalized weapons bay, the internalized weapons bay wasn't an afterthought. It was core to making the fighter stealth. They didn't go, okay, well, now we've built out the whole fighter, where are we going to put the missiles? Well, if we hang them on the wings, then it's not really going to be stealth. What can we do? Oh, guess we'll all just shove them up inside the belly. No, that was one of the very first things that defined the ship or defined the plane and how it was going to be, is internalized weapons, carrying them within the aircraft. And so when you kind of see the other side of it and it's just like, well, it's just an afterthought, that's unfortunate. Maybe that's just poor wording, but that was kind of one of those, like, oh god moments. When I saw that, I thought, ugh. But anyways, yeah, very positive on the ship. I like it. I can't wait to see it in game now. Hopefully, some minor tweaks and revisions to the outer appearance as it comes into game, which undoubtedly will happen. possibly some gun placement changes, CIG if you're watching. But overall, yeah, I like it. I like the design. I especially liked when I heard Range of the Herald. When I heard that, and then when Matt Sherman was talking about the possibility of a specific interdiction weapon that can go with the ship, that very much caught my attention. Now, as to the 360-degree firing arc of the main weapons, I'm not really sure that that's a good idea or if that's viable, because really, so what you're saying is, so while you're trying to escape from someone, you can kind of switch to over-the-shoulder view and fire behind you with little or no accuracy whilst not looking where you're going. I don't know about that. Anyways, enough. The Buccaneer, clearly, I'm all in. So let's move on to my fleet. Alright, now as I've said, with my fleet, right now the setup is looking like 1 Saber, 2 Buccaneers as wingmen, a Caterpillar for the time being into the future, which is the 3rd Buccaneer is going to become the Caterpillar, and then a Reclaimer, and then question mark Polaris. Now, the setup is like that because if I'm flying my Saber, I've got the Buccaneers to act as a distraction. I can say, attack my target, whatever. They go after it. While they're busy mixing it up with my target, I can then sweep in with the Saber, deliver a killing blow. I mean, as you know, NPC pilots are probably, everyone kind of says, oh, well, NPCs are going to be the greatest. They're going to be top notch. And they might be very, very good in the end. But really, all I'm really counting on these to do is serve as a distraction. And in Buccaneers, to serve as a cheap distraction. Something that you can't really avoid dealing with, but something that once you're focused on that, then I can move in with the Saber and deliver a killing blow. So that really is kind of how I feel that that's going to work out. Now, originally it was going to be 2 Super Hornets that were going to serve in that role, but the expense of running the Super Hornets did concern me somewhat, and this seems to alleviate that problem. And it also gives me access to another fun little ship should I want to fly it myself. Now, beyond that, the Caterpillar is something that I want to explore with. I want to see and then decide later if I'm going to keep it or not. But, being the next of the big ships, I definitely want to be in there with a ship that I'm actually going to be flying, and not just, kind of running around inside of a Starfarer knowing that I'm not going to own it, because even though I do think the Starfarer is a good ship and a very useful ship, especially for refueling, your allies, or just making money refueling people out in space, it's not exactly something that I want. I want something a little less maze-like on the interior, and something a little bit more practical. And so I think that the Caterpillar is going to serve that role for me and my personal needs moving forward. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. If it doesn't, always melt it, no problem there. Now, of course, the Reclaimer is a ship that, as soon as I saw it, I was just like, yeah, I want it. I gotta have that. And, finding out that possibly this year the Caterpillar could go in, the Reclaimer could go in, is something that I'm very excited about. And I'm very excited to see, of course, a large-scale salvage ship with possibly some heavy-hitting guns on it. That remains to be seen. I think that is a little bit of a high hope on my part, but I'll wait and see how that all plays out, especially with those capital-sized pylons on it, whether or not those are just ship defense or if they can be used for different things. I'm hopeful, but I'm cautious in saying that I don't really think that it's going to be all capital-sized weapons that you can fit on this thing, though I wouldn't complain if we could. Now, of course, the Polaris is the big question mark. The Polaris is equal parts enthusiasm and equal parts concern. And you know, really, when you look at the two shows that I do, I mean, if Ship Updates is my unbridled enthusiasm for Star Citizen, then the Piracy show more or less reflects my kind of cautious and skeptical nature. And so when I look at the Polaris, I mean, of course, you know, a capital-sized ship that is basically designed around combat is something that very much interests me. Now, what form that's going to take is as of yet a complete unknown. And it doesn't really enthuse me that we've gotten so few details. I would like to hear words like modularity in reference to this. It's just that when you're talking about a ship that has this much broad appeal and that this many people are watching and going, I want to see what this is. I mean, the speculation threads alone probably equate several novels already on the forums. The fact that it's being developed more or less kind of behind closed doors, and that it's going to be something that is just going to arrive without, you know, with the Buccaneer, we had so much feedback or so much, you know, input going in. And I'd like to think I played a little bit of a part in that when I suggested attack helicopter, but probably not. But with the Polaris, I think with a capital ship, I really think that there should be a thread, much like the Buccaneer thread, where people can input their ideas, because I think that there's a lot of good ideas out there. And honestly, I would love to see a modular ship. I would love to see a ship that you can reconfigure to fulfill certain roles, whether it's anti-capital, anti-sort of AA, anti-air, anti-fighter, electronic warfare, command and control, where you can add and swap components, much like the Endeavor, depending on what role you want to fulfill. And I think that is the way going forward for this ship. But the fact that we haven't heard anything as of yet, and yet they've already said, you know, well, we've already kind of found our look or our design, once again, that's a little concerning to me. But I am hopeful that we're going to see a modular ship. And if we don't, well, I've got a whole lot of options to make my mind up with later. Anyways, that's the Piracy show for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm really glad that the Buccaneer basically exceeded my expectations. When it goes into production later this year, hopefully it will be a very short production cycle, and it's something that we can get our hands on quickly. But definitely a lot of ships to look forward to, and some very interesting days ahead. Hopefully we'll see that Caterpillar sale, which again should be at the concept sale price, which is $245 very soon. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.